assassination of Prime Minister Halim.
نتمنى يوقف العهد التجاري والحدود التجاري.
بدنا أولادنا الله 15 يوم يخافوا الله.
Good afternoon. You are watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Lena Team, and these are today's headlines. The Joint Parliamentary Committees form a 10-member subcommittee to tackle the contaminated food scandal, granting it a 15-day ultimatum to draft a food safety law. Prime Minister Tamam Slam launches a campaign to support efforts to help ease the burden on both the Syrian refugees and their Lebanese hosts. And at least 13 people are killed and several are fear-trapped after an 8-story building collapsed in the Egyptian capital of Cairo. The Joint Parliamentary Committees have formed a 10-member subcommittee to tackle the contaminated food scandal, granting it a 15-day ultimatum to draft a food safety law. The subcommittee, that will be headed by future MP Atif Majdalani, will work on merging 2 proposals and form a final food safety law. The first proposal is suggested by Majdalani himself, while the second by Tripoli MP and former Prime Minister Najib Mikati. MP Majdalani lauded Health Minister Wael Abu Fahour's food safety campaign in a press conference after the joint parliamentary meeting. He called for the establishment of a food safety association that is independent from all ministries and comprised of technicians and experts. For his part, Abu Fahour vowed to go ahead with his campaign against corrupt institutions, noting that the health ministry will resort to the judiciary regarding food safety cases. He also called for the formation of a general prosecution for food, urging officials to separate the case from politics. Prime Minister Tamam Slam has launched a campaign to support efforts to help ease the burden on both the Syrian refugees and their Lebanese hosts. The conference, held at the Grand Serai in downtown Beirut, was attended by Foreign Minister Jimrab Basil, Social Affairs Minister Rashid Darbas, Education Minister Ilyas Boussab, Labour Minister Sejan Azzi, and a number of ambassadors and diplomatic figures. Basil, for his part, said at a separate media campaign launched by the Economy Ministry that the situation in Syria remains uncertain. He added Lebanon has provided benefits to Syrian refugees from a substantial range of infrastructure. At least 13 people have been killed and several were fear-trapped after an 8-story building collapsed in the western Cairo suburb of Matariya. Egyptian police officials said that 8 residents of the building were also injured when the building fell in early this morning. Rescue teams were searching for survivors trapped under the rubble, and several surrounding buildings have been evacuated. The officials said the collapse was caused by unauthorized construction of several extra stories on the old building. Building collapses are relatively common in Egypt, where shoddy construction is widespread in shanty towns, poor city neighborhoods, and rural areas. With a housing shortage and lax government oversight, developers seeking bigger profits frequently build without authorization or permits. Tunisian secularist leader Beji Caid Essebsi beat incumbent President Monsef Marzouki in the first round of landmark presidential elections, but early results show the 2 men will have to meet again in December for a runoff. Essebsi from the Nidat Tunis party got 39.46% in Sunday's poll, short of the needed overall majority, but ahead of Marzouki, who got 33.4% according to the figures. The campaigns for the runoff vote for the presidency have already kicked off between Essebsi, a former official under the toppled ruler Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, and Marzouki, who is popular among Islamists. Candidate Hamma Hamami, the leader of Tunisia's Popular Front, came in third with only 7% of the votes. And coming up next, violent reactions in the Ferguson case. We'll be right back. Welcome back. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says the international community's failure to advance a political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is spurring governments and parliaments to take action to recognize the state of Palestine, and that momentum will grow. Ban was speaking at the UN commemoration of the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. He said the international community must assume some responsibility for not being able to help forge a peace deal between Israel and Palestine. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has welcomed changes in popular sentiment in the West that have reached official political levels, starting with Sweden's recognition of the State of Palestine and the overwhelming motions supporting recognition by parliaments in Britain, Ireland and Spain. For his part, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations blasted the Swedish government for its recognition of the State of Palestine. Negotiators have extended talks on Iran's nuclear program for a comprehensive agreement until July of next year, after failing to meet a Monday deadline. But Iran's President Hassan Rouhani said a nuclear deal with the 6 world powers would be done despite a missed deadline in Vienna that prompted a 7-month extension in talks. Iran and 6 world powers, the US, China, Russia, Britain, France and Germany, have been negotiating for 6 days in the Austrian capital to turn an interim accord reached with the Islamic Republic a year ago into lasting agreement. The 6 nations want Tehran to scale back its nuclear program in exchange for a lifting of sanctions. But Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Iran will not sink to its knees over the controversial issue. 2 explosions at a crowded market in northeastern Nigeria have killed more than 60 people. Sources say the twin bomb blasts hit Monday market in Maiduguri, the capital of Borno State. Soldiers and police officers cordoned off the area while rescue workers helped survivors to the hospital. Clashes between angry protesters and riot police erupted in Ferguson, Missouri, after a grand jury said they will not indict a police officer for the fatal shooting of an unarmed teenager. Some of the hundreds of people who gathered outside the Ferguson Police Department erupted in anger at St. Louis County Prosecutor Bob McCullough's announcement that Officer Darren Wilson will not face charges for shooting 18-year-old Michael Brown in August. The developments in this report.
Thousands of people rallied in U.S. cities, including Los Angeles and New York, to protest against a grand jury's decision not to indict a white police officer who killed an unarmed black 18-year-old in Ferguson, Missouri.
The duty of the grand jury is to separate fact from fiction. After a full and impartial and critical examination of all the evidence in the law, and decide if that evidence supported the filing of any criminal charges against Darren Wilson. They accepted and completed this monumental responsibility in a conscientious and expeditious manner. It is important to note here and say again that they are the only people who have heard and examined every witness and every piece of evidence. They discussed and debated the evidence among themselves before arriving at their collective decision. After their exhaustive review of the evidence, the grand jury deliberated over 2 days, making their final decision. They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
Protesters smashed windows out of police cars and businesses, several of which were later set ablaze, and officers responded with tear gas thrown from inside armored vehicles to disperse crowds as violence overtook protests in Ferguson. Gunshots rang out at several points during the night, though it was not immediately clear if anyone was hit or any arrests were made in relation to the gunfire. As police tried to regain control, some people were filmed breaking into shops and leaving with items they had stolen. The racially charged case in Ferguson has inflamed tensions and reignited debates over police-community relations, even in cities far from the predominantly black St. Louis suburb. Angry protesters overran barricades and taunted police, with some chanting "murderer" and others throwing stones and bottles as police car windows were smashed and protesters tried to set vehicles ablaze. Activists had been planning to protest even before the nighttime announcement that Officer Darren Wilson would not be charged in the shooting death of Michael Brown on August 9th.
I'm hurt. I have a son, so I'm hurt. What am I to tell my son when he grows up?
Did you expect this?
Yeah. I did.
But you still hoped that it would be different?
You try and have hope, but this is what happened.
Wilson shot Brown 12 times according to evidence presented to the grand jury, with witness reports differing as to whether and when Brown had his hands raised. Brown's family quickly urged a nonviolent response to the grand jury's decision. In a statement released shortly after it, the family said, quote, "We are profoundly disappointed that the killer of our child will not face the consequences of his actions." While we understand that many others share our pain, we ask that you channel your frustration in ways that will make a positive change. We need to work together to fix the system that allowed this to happen. Officials urged tolerance and assured residents that the National Guard would provide security at critical facilities such as firehouses, police stations, and utility substations. St. Louis County Executive Director Charlie Dooley said before the grand jury's decision, "I do not want people in this community to think they have to barricade their doors and take up arms."
And still in the United States, President Barack Obama has presented the highest U.S. civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, to 18 artists, politicians, writers, scholars, and activists, including actress Meryl Streep and singer-songwriter Stevie Wonder. One of the most popular musicians of all time, honoree singer-songwriter Stevie Wonder, has had more than 30 top 10 hits, received 22 Grammy Awards, and sold over 100 million albums and singles.
Early copies of Stevie Wonder's classic album, Talking Book, had a simple message written in Braille. "Here is my music. It is all I have to tell you how I feel. Know that your love keeps my love strong." This is, by the way, the first album I ever bought with my own money. I was 10 years old, maybe 11, with my own cash. I didn't have a lot of it. And I listened to that thing. That thing got so worn out, had all scratches. Young people, you won't remember this, but you'd have albums, and they'd get scratched. The Onion once ran this headline: "Court rules Meryl Streep unable to be tried by jury as she has no peers." Now, I think this is like the third or fourth award Meryl's gotten since I've been in office. And I've said it publicly, I love Meryl Streep. I love her. Her husband knows I love her. Michelle knows I love her. There's nothing either of them can do about it. But she's done it all for her craft.
The weather in New York was unseasonably warm, but Indina Menzel helped get people in the holiday spirit by performing at a celebration for Bloomingdale's annual Holiday Windows display. The Tony Award-winning singer and actress was introduced with a special performance by Illuminate of the hit off-Broadway show, which combines music, technology, and entertainers wearing light suits. The Bloomingdale's windows this year are interactive, where people who visit can play games and even interact using social media. Menzel's fame has reached new heights this year thanks to singing the Oscar-winning song Let It Go from the animated film Frozen. She was nominated for a Tony this year, as well as for her performance in the Broadway musical If Then. Menzel also just announced a world tour and released a holiday album.
Have a holly jolly Christmas, it's the best time of the year. I don't know if there'll be snow, but have a cup of cheer. Have a holly jolly Christmas, and when we walk down the street, say hello to friends you know and everyone we meet. Oh, the mistletoe hung where you can see. Somebody waits for you, kissing once for me. Have a holly jolly Christmas, and in case you didn't hear, oh by golly, have a holly jolly.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. The Joint Parliamentary Committees formed a 10-member subcommittee to tackle the contaminated food scandal, granting it a 15-day ultimatum to draft a food safety law. Prime Minister Tamam Salam launches a campaign to support efforts to help ease the burden on both the Syrian refugees and their Lebanese hosts. And at least 13 people are killed and several are feared trapped after an 8-story building collapsed in the Egyptian capital of Cairo. Those were your Tuesday headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice evening.